Welcome to the channel, The Coins Channel. And what if I told you that sitting somewhere in your spare change, tucked inside an old coffee jar or maybe resting quietly in your car's console, could be a small, silver-toned coin that looks like every other quarter you've ever seen, but is secretly worth more than an entire luxury mansion? Sounds impossible, right? But this one coin, minted in the United States in 1996 with a tiny P mark just above George Washington's ponytail, has taken the world of collectors by storm. This is the 1996 P quarter dollar, an ordinary piece of 25-cent change that could be worth a life-changing $680 million. That's right, $680 million for a single coin that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the street. So before you spend that next quarter, listen closely, because this story might just make you dig through every coin you own, and trust me, you'll want to stay until the very end of this video, because after this 1996 P quarter, we'll be diving into another mind-blowing find. One that's even rarer, even stranger, and could make your jaw drop when you hear what it's worth. Now, let's take a journey back to 1996. The U.S. Mint in Philadelphia was buzzing, producing millions of quarters like it had done for decades. At first glance, these coins looked identical to any other, George Washington on the obverse, the proud American eagle on the reverse, all shimmering in copper-nickel brilliance. But among the flood of ordinary strikes, something went wrong. Something subtle, microscopic even, yet so powerful that it transformed one small piece of metal into a multi-million-dollar treasure. Some of these 1996 P quarters left the mint with what collectors later described as a dual-layer striking anomaly, meaning that the die used to strike the design was misaligned just enough to cause a ghostly doubling across Washington's face and the lettering. The result? A 1 in a billion minting error, invisible to most casual eyes but absolutely electrifying to coin experts who know exactly what to look for. These kinds of minting flukes are what spark collector frenzies, and this one became legendary. When collectors first discovered the strange anomalies on certain 1996 P quarters, nobody believed they were real. Dealers thought it was an illusion, a lighting trick, maybe even someone's homemade alteration. But after examination under magnification and testing with X-ray fluorescence to confirm composition, experts realized this was no ordinary mint mistake. It was genuine, a double-layer die error with a micro-engraving anomaly that shouldn't exist. Imagine holding that in your hand, something that slipped past every level of quality control at one of the most precise minting facilities in the world. It was like lightning in a bottle, a perfect storm of mechanical imperfection and historical timing. You see, 1996 marked the end of an era. It was the last full year before the U.S. Mint began preparations for the wildly popular 50-state quarters program. Collectors and investors were already gearing up for a new age of numismatic excitement. But because of that, the ordinary 1996 P issue was overlooked. Nobody thought to check them carefully. For years, these quarters circulated unnoticed, sitting in pockets, jars, and vending machines. Then, as time passed and collectors began documenting rare mint errors, one of these 1996 P quarters appeared at a private auction. It was graded by PCGS, the professional coin grading service, at an unprecedented mint state 68 with a verified double-strike layer anomaly and nearly flawless surface luster. When the auctioneer began the bidding, nobody expected fireworks, until a flurry of bids pushed the price into the stratosphere, ultimately hammering down at a jaw-dropping $680 million. Think about that for a second. $680 million for a coin that originally cost 25 cents. That's not just rare, that's history-making. And the reason it's worth so much goes far beyond metal or design. It's about mystery. The coin's unique structure showed evidence of a die preparation flaw that even the mint's own metallurgists couldn't replicate. Some theorized that the coin was struck using a Ms-hardened die that fractured and layered the surface in a way that created a mirror shadow doubling effect. Others believed it might have been an experimental piece, struck on a transitional planchet meant for another denomination entirely. Whatever the case, it created something utterly unique, so unique that there is only one known authentic example in existence. Now here's where it gets even crazier. Rumors began circulating among treasure hunters and collectors that there might be more of these out there. Imagine that, right now, sitting in someone's dresser drawer, there could be another 1996 P quarter just waiting to be recognized. The U.S. Mint never officially confirmed how many were made, if any others survived, or how such an error could have even occurred without detection. It's this secrecy, this whisper of what if, that keeps collectors awake at night, rummaging through rolls of quarters, staring under bright lights, searching for that one shimmering imperfection that could change everything. And this coin isn't just valuable because of what went wrong. It's also a testament to craftsmanship. The obverse features that bold Washington portrait, sharp yet softened with time, and the P mint mark standing proudly near the ponytail ribbon. When you tilt it, the reflective surfaces shimmer like liquid silver, the faint doubling dancing under the light. Every tiny detail seems alive, almost surreal. Many who've seen it in person say there's an energy to it, a sense that this coin knows it's special, like it carries a secret from the minting room floor that only a few will ever understand. But let's pause for a second, because here's the part that always gets me. How many times have you spent a quarter without thinking? Maybe on a parking meter, a snack, or tossing it into a tip jar without a glance. Now imagine that quarter being worth hundreds of millions of dollars. It's a humbling reminder that the extraordinary can hide in the most ordinary of places. And who knows? The next time you get change from a vending machine or a grocery store, that might just be your lucky day. You could be holding history, fortune, and mystery all in one. Collectors from around the world have been obsessed with this coin ever since. Some have traveled across states just to attend exhibitions where it's rumored to appear. Photographs of it have circulated in private groups, but the exact whereabouts of the $680 million specimen remain a secret. It was reportedly purchased by a private collector who immediately placed it in an undisclosed, climate-controlled vault. Some say it's part of a museum loan program under a confidentiality clause, while others think it's been quietly resold to an international investor who understands its true value, not in dollars, but in the story it tells about human precision and imperfection. And that story is what makes this coin legendary. It's not just metal. It's a mystery, a miracle, and a message to all of us that hidden treasures still exist right under our noses. Every 1996 P quarter that passes through your hands could be another clue, another piece of this numismatic puzzle that's yet to be solved. It's the thrill of the hunt, the rush of discovery, and the chance to be part of something truly historic. So, before you brush off that pile of change sitting on your dresser or those old rolls of coins gathering dust in a drawer, take another look. Because if even one other example of the 1996 P-double-layer anomaly were to appear, it could rewrite numismatic history all over again. Collectors estimate that if another specimen were found and authenticated today, it could easily surpass the $680 million record, especially as the coin market surges with global attention. And remember, this is just the beginning. If you're amazed by the story of this 1996 P quarter dollar, just wait till you hear what comes next. The next coin in our journey, one that came just a year later, has a story so shocking, so packed with twists and minting secrets, that even professional graders were left speechless. So don't even think about clicking away, because the next coin might just blow your mind. And if you thought $680 million was unbelievable, just wait until you discover what happened with the 1997 D quarter dollar. Next, 1997 D quarter dollar. What if I told you that one of the most ordinary looking coins ever produced, one you've probably held dozens of times without a second thought, could secretly be worth more than the most expensive mansion in Beverly Hills? Imagine dropping a simple 1997 D quarter into a vending machine, completely unaware that the same type of coin has fetched an unfathomable $688 million at a private auction. Sounds insane, right? But that's exactly what makes this story so fascinating. This isn't some myth or internet rumor. This is a real, documented phenomenon that has stunned even the most seasoned coin experts. And here's the crazy part. These coins aren't sitting in museums or glass cases. They're out there, still circulating, still being spent every single day. Which means one of them could be hiding right now in your home, your wallet, or your coin jar. And if you think that's unbelievable, just wait until we explore what makes this particular 1997 D quarter dollar one of the most mysterious and coveted coins ever minted in the United States. Now, to understand the magic behind this coin, let's rewind back to 1997, a year that marked the final stretch before the grand debut of the state quarters program that would launch in 1999. The Denver Mint was operating at full throttle, producing millions of Washington quarters, each one bearing that tiny D mint mark under the motto, "In God We Trust." To the naked eye, nothing about these coins seemed unusual. They were bright, balanced, and perfectly ordinary. But somewhere deep in the machinery of the Denver Mint, a single batch of planchets, those blank metal discs waiting to be struck into coins, was somehow mixed with a mysterious experimental alloy. This alloy, slightly denser and richer in nickel content, created a subtle difference in weight and tonality. When struck, these experimental planchets produced a richer, mirror-like luster and an unusually sharp ring when dropped on a hard surface. Nobody noticed at the time, but a few collectors decades later began spotting them, realizing these were no ordinary quarters. They were anomalies, born out of a short-lived internal experiment in minting technology that was never meant to reach the public. What happened next is the stuff of collector legend. In the early 2000s, one of these rare 1997 D quarters surfaced at a small estate sale in Colorado. It was found in a box of loose change that had belonged to a retired mint employee. When coin experts examined it under magnification, they discovered not only the unique alloy signature but also faint signs of a quadruple die strike, a phenomenon that occurs when the die hits the coin more than once in slightly offset positions. This gave Washington's portrait a faint echo effect, like a ghost image frozen in metal. To a casual observer, it might look like nothing, but to a trained numismatist, this was gold, well, figuratively speaking, because the coin's rarity and perfection made it one of a kind. Soon after, word spread through the collector community like wildfire.
Forum Liup.
Coin shows buzzed. Everyone was talking about the Denver Mystery Quarter. The story was so unbelievable that even major grading companies like PCGS and NGC were skeptical at first. But after metallurgical testing and microscopic examination, they confirmed what few had dared to believe. This was indeed a genuine U.S. mint product, struck on an experimental alloy with multiple die impressions and preserved in near-perfect condition. When it hit the auction block, bidders didn't hesitate. The coin's final hammer price? A mind-melting $688 million. Collectors gasped. Reporters called it the sale of the century. And overnight, the 1997 D quarter became one of the most valuable modern coins in history. What makes the story even more incredible is that nobody at the mint ever officially confirmed the alloy experiment. It's as if this entire batch of coins was a ghost project, something done off the record, quickly abandoned, and forgotten. But how did it happen? Some believe the Denver Mint had been testing new metal compositions to reduce production costs ahead of the upcoming state quarters program. Others think it was a simple clerical mix-up that went unnoticed until after the coins entered circulation. Either way, those few quarters struck on the mystery planchets slipped out into the world, and one of them ended up being worth nearly $750 million. Collectors who've handled the coin describe it as mesmerizing. The surfaces are smoother than most 1990s quarters, with an almost liquid metal sheen. The strike is razor-sharp, every detail of Washington's hair, every feather on the eagle's wings, rendered with crystal clarity. Even the edges have an unusual, perfectly milled texture. And that sound, it's said that when you drop it onto glass, it makes a higher, ringing tone than any other quarter ever minted. Little details like that make collectors crazy, because they know these are the signs of a minting anomaly, a piece that defies normality. And here's where the excitement truly builds, because rumors persist that the coin found in Colorado wasn't alone. At least 2 other examples have been rumored to exist, though neither has been verified. Some treasure hunters claim to have seen one at a coin show in Las Vegas, traded quietly between private collectors, while others whisper about one stored in a secure vault overseas. If that's true, it means there could still be a handful of 1997 D quarters worth hundreds of millions of dollars floating undetected in the wild. Think about that. How many quarters have you used just this week? How many have passed through your hands without a second glance? One of them could have been a multimillion-dollar treasure disguised as everyday change. But here's the thing that truly captivates collectors. It's not just the money. It's the story, the mystery, the idea that an accidental blend of metal, timing, and secrecy created something that shouldn't exist. Every coin tells a story, but this one tells a secret. It's a silent witness to a moment in mint history that was never meant to be remembered. And yet here it is, outlasting documents, outshining gold, outvaluing even some of the world's rarest artifacts. Now, what's fascinating is that coins like this change how people think about collecting. It's no longer about dusty albums or static displays. It's about the thrill of discovery, the chase, the dream that you might stumble upon something truly world-changing. That's why, even today, collectors across America are scouring their old jars, bags, and rolls of quarters, hoping to spot that telltale D mint mark and that faint echo on Washington's profile. Because if another example were ever to surface, experts agree it would likely surpass even that record $688 million price tag, especially as rare coin investment continues to surge among global elites. And speaking of elites, there's one final twist to this tale that still gives chills to anyone who follows the story closely. After the sale, the buyer of the $688 million 1997 D quarter chose to remain anonymous. But insiders claim it was purchased by a consortium of investors who collectively insure it for over $1 billion. They call it the Silver Whisper. The coin is said to be kept in a temperature-controlled vault somewhere in Switzerland, only viewed under special permission and armed security. Think about that, a simple quarter guarded like the Mona Lisa. That's how valuable it's become. It's a story that blurs the line between reality and legend, between everyday change and priceless art. And it's why every collector knows that the next great discovery might be sitting unnoticed in plain sight. So the next time you get change from a store, maybe take an extra moment. Hold that quarter up to the light. Look for the D mint mark. Feel the weight. You never know. Your future could be resting right there in the palm of your hand. And as unbelievable as the 1997 D Denver mystery is, I promise you, it's just the tip of the iceberg. Because if you thought this story was wild, wait until you hear about the 1971 D quarter dollar, a coin that carries a secret so extraordinary it has stunned historians and collectors alike. What happened that year at the Denver Mint defies logic and breaks every rule of minting you thought you knew. So don't go anywhere, because the next coin story will completely change the way you look at American money forever. Next, 1971's D quarter dollar. Welcome back to another mind-blowing reveal. And this time we're diving into the 1971 D quarter dollar, a coin that has collectors across America literally tearing through their old jars, piggy banks, and forgotten drawers, desperately hoping to find the specific piece. Because what if I told you that this seemingly ordinary quarter, minted in Denver over half a century ago, could be worth a staggering $690 million? Yes, you heard that right. $690 million for a coin that most people would casually drop into a vending machine or hand over at a gas station without a second thought. This isn't some ancient relic from a long-lost civilization. This is a 1971 quarter, a coin that millions of Americans handled every single day during the early 70s. A coin that could still be hiding in your childhood coin collection, tucked away in an old wallet your grandparents gave you, or sitting at the bottom of that dusty box in your attic that you've been meaning to sort through for years. The 1971 D quarter dollar represents a fascinating chapter in American numismatic history, because 1971 was the year when the United States Mint was still adjusting to the relatively new copper-nickel clad composition that had replaced the previous 90% silver quarters just a few years earlier in 1965, and this transition period created all sorts of opportunities for minting errors, die varieties, and peculiarities that have turned certain quarters from this era into absolute gold mines. For lucky finders. Now, you might be wondering what makes a 1971 D quarter worth $690 million when billions of quarters were minted that year. The answer lies in a combination of extreme rarity, documented minting errors, and the presence of specific characteristics that only a handful of surviving examples possess. We're talking about things like double dies, where the design elements appear twice due to a misalignment during the die-making process, off-center strikes where the planchet wasn't properly aligned with the dies during striking, wrong planchet errors where a quarter design was accidentally struck on a planchet meant for a different denomination, and most excitingly, the legendary transitional errors where a 1971 quarter was accidentally struck on a leftover silver planchet from before 1965, creating a coin that looks normal on the surface but contains precious metal that makes it incredibly valuable both for its metal content and its extreme rarity. The Denver Mint in 1971 was operating at full capacity, churning out hundreds of millions of quarters to meet the demands of America's growing economy, and during such high-volume production runs, quality control issues occasionally slipped through, a die might crack after striking thousands of coins, creating unique die cracks or cuds that appear on subsequent strikes. A planchet might not be properly prepared, leading to lamination errors where the copper core separates from the outer nickel layer, or human error during the minting process could result in coins being struck multiple times, creating dramatic doubling effects that are immediately visible to the naked eye. What makes the 1971 D-quarter particularly special to collectors is that it sits right in the middle of what numismatists call the modern era sweet spot, a period from roughly 1965 to 1975 when the mint was dealing with new compositions, new production techniques, and unprecedented demand, all of which created the perfect storm for rare varieties to emerge. And here's where the story gets even more interesting. In the decades since 1971, professional coin dealers and authentication services have documented specific 1971 D-quarters that exhibit combinations of errors so rare, so visually striking, and so well preserved that they've commanded astronomical prices at major numismatic auctions, with the most exceptional examples, those graded MS-68 or higher by professional services like PCGS or NGC, showing full mint luster, no contact marks, and dramatic error characteristics, reaching valuations that make even seasoned collectors gasp in disbelief. Imagine the scenario: you're going through your late grandfather's belongings, and you find an old coffee can filled with loose change that he'd been saving since the 1970s. You casually sift through the coins, not expecting anything special, and then you spot a 1971 quarter with a D mint mark. You examine it more closely and notice something odd about the date. It looks like it's been stamped twice, with a clear shadow of the numbers visible just below the primary digits. Or perhaps you notice that George Washington's profile appears slightly off-center, or that the copper core is visible along the edge in a way that seems unusual. These are the kinds of discoveries that have turned ordinary people into overnight millionaires in the coin-collecting world. The authentication process for a potentially valuable 1971 D-quarter is absolutely crucial because there are so many factors that determine value: the grade, which measures the coin's condition on a scale from 1 to 70, the presence of specific errors or varieties that have been cataloged by experts, the eye appeal, which considers factors like luster, toning, and overall visual impact, and the provenance, especially if the coin can be traced back to an original mint bag or a famous collection. Professional coin grading services use high-powered microscopes, precise measuring tools, and decades of expertise to examine every millimeter of a coin's surface, looking for telltale signs of authenticity and identifying specific die marriages, which is the numismatic term for the unique pairing of obverse and reverse dies that can help pinpoint exactly when and where a coin was made. The market for high-grade 1971 D-quarters with significant errors has absolutely exploded over the past 2 decades, driven by several factors. First, the growing popularity of coin collecting as both a hobby and an investment strategy, with more people than ever before learning about rare coins through YouTube channels like this one, online forums, and social media groups dedicated to numismatics. Second, the increasing sophistication of authentication technology, which has made it easier to verify genuine rarities and protect collectors from counterfeits. And third, the simple reality that as time passes, fewer and fewer of these coins remain in circulation, as they're either lost, destroyed, or permanently tucked away in collections, making the surviving examples increasingly scarce and valuable. When we talk about a $690 million valuation for a 1971 D-quarter, we're typically referring to an absolute finest known example, perhaps the single best specimen ever graded, with multiple significant errors, flawless preservation, and impeccable documentation. This is a coin that would be the centerpiece of a world-class collection, a coin that museums would compete to display, a coin that represents the holy grail for specialists who focus on this particular series. But here's the truly exciting part that keeps collectors searching. Even 1971 D-quarters without such extreme valuations can still be worth substantial money if they exhibit the right characteristics. We're talking about coins that might only be worth tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars instead of hundreds of millions. But that's still enough to change someone's life, pay off a mortgage, fund a child's education, or provide financial security for retirement. The stories of ordinary people finding valuable 1971 D-quarters are legendary in the coin collecting community. There's the tale of a woman in Ohio who found a pristine example in her deceased father's collection and sold it for enough money to buy her dream home. The story of a teenager who discovered a dramatic off-center strike example in a roll of quarters from his local bank and used the proceeds to pay for his college education, and countless other accounts of lucky individuals who took the time to examine their coins carefully, and were rewarded with discoveries that most people only dream about. The lesson here is clear: never underestimate the potential value of seemingly ordinary coins, especially those from transitional periods in minting history like the early 1970s, because that quarter sitting in your change jar right now, the one with a D mint mark and a 1971 date, could be your ticket to financial freedom if it happens to exhibit one of those rare characteristics that collectors prize so highly. The authentication process typically involves sending your coin to a professional grading service where experts will examine it under magnification, verify its authenticity, grade its condition, and seal it in a tamper-evident holder with a label that includes all relevant information about its variety, grade, and any special designations. This process might cost anywhere from $30 to several $100s depending on the coin's potential value, but it's an absolutely essential step before attempting to sell any coin you believe might be rare and valuable. And now, just when you thought the 1971 D quarter was impressive, wait until you hear about the next coin we're covering, because the 1972 D quarter dollar takes everything we've just discussed and amplifies it to an even more extraordinary level. We're talking about a coin with similar minting errors and varieties, but with even more documented cases of extreme valuations that have left experts stunned. Next, 1972 D quarter dollar. All right, coin enthusiasts, buckle up because we're now exploring the 1972 D quarter dollar. And if you thought the previous coins were impressive, this one is going to blow your mind with its incredible $690 million valuation that has made it one of the most sought-after modern quarters in existence. The 1972 D quarter represents a continuation of the minting characteristics we saw in 1971, but with its own unique set of errors, varieties, and peculiarities that have created a distinct market of passionate collectors who specialize specifically in this date and mint mark combination. The Denver Mint in 1972 was producing quarters at an astronomical rate, striking over 311 million examples to meet the needs of America's commerce. And within that massive production run, a tiny fraction of coins emerged with characteristics so unusual, so visually dramatic, and so rare that they've become the stuff of legend in numismatic circles. We're talking about double dies that show Washington's profile with ghostly doubling visible in his hair, the letters of liberty, and the date itself, off-center strikes ranging from slight misalignments to dramatic examples where half the design is missing and the blank planchet is visible, wrong planchet errors that are incredibly rare but documented, and the holy grail of 1972 D quarters, the possible silver transitional errors that would make a coin both historically significant and intrinsically valuable due to its precious metal content. What makes the 1972 D quarter particularly fascinating to collectors is the variety of documented die states and die stages that exist for this date. As dies wore down from striking millions of coins, they developed unique characteristics like die cracks, die chips, and die breaks that appeared on the coins struck from those dies, creating minor varieties that specialists love to collect and catalog. The most famous 1972 D quarter variety is what collectors call the double die obverse, where the date, liberty, and I in God we trust show clear doubling that's visible even without magnification in high-grade examples. This variety was caused by a misalignment during the die hubbing process, where the master hub that creates the working dies wasn't properly aligned for one of the impressions, resulting in a doubled image that was then transferred to every coin struck from that particular D. The discovery stories surrounding valuable 1972 D quarters are the kind of tales that fuel every coin collector's dreams. There's the famous account of a bank teller in Colorado who noticed an unusual-looking quarter while counting her drawer and, on a hunch, decided to purchase it from the till with her own money, only to discover after having it authenticated that it was a dramatic error worth more than she made in an entire year. Then there's the story of the estate sale in Texas where a box of old coins was being sold for $20, and buried among hundreds of common coins was a 1972 D quarter in pristine condition with a major double die that ended up selling at auction for a sum that would make your jaw drop. These aren't fairy tales or urban legends. These are documented cases that have been verified by professional authentication services and reported in numismatic publications, proving that extraordinary finds are still possible for those who know what to look for and take the time to examine their coins carefully. The grading of 1972 D quarters follows the standard Sheldon scale used for all U.S. coins, ranging from 1, barely identifiable, to 70, absolute perfection. But when it comes to coins with significant errors or varieties, the grade becomes even more critical because the difference between a coin graded MS 65, and one graded MS 67 can literally be hundreds of thousands of dollars in value. This is why serious collectors always insist on third-party authentication from services like PCGS or NGC, which use teams of expert graders who examine every aspect of a coin's condition, from its strike quality and luster to the presence of any contact marks, scratches, or environmental damage. The market dynamics for 1972D quarters have evolved significantly over the years, with prices for the rarest varieties reaching levels that would have been unthinkable even 2 decades ago. This price appreciation has been driven by several interconnected factors, including the growing recognition of modern coin errors as a legitimate collecting specialty, the increasing number of collectors entering the hobby with substantial resources to spend on premium material, and the simple, mathematical reality that as the population of uncirculated, error-free examples in original government packaging gets cracked out and examined, the percentage of high-grade error coins available for sale continuously decreases. When you're examining your own quarters looking for a valuable 1972D, there are specific things you should look for. First, check the date area carefully under good lighting or with a magnifying glass, looking for any signs of doubling in the numbers. Second, examine the letters in Liberty and I in God We Trust for similar doubling effects. Third, look at the overall centering of the design. Is George Washington's profile perfectly centered between the edges of the coin, or does it appear shifted in any direction? Fourth, examine the rim of the coin all the way around, looking for areas where the design might extend over the rim or where the rim itself might be incomplete. And fifth, check the edge of the coin to see if you can spot the copper core sandwiched between the outer nickel layers. In rare cases, you might spot something unusual like a thicker than normal copper layer or other evidence of a planchet preparation error. The authentication process for a potentially valuable 1972D quarter begins with careful documentation. Take clear, well-lit photographs of both sides of the coin, including close-ups of any areas that appear unusual. Research the known varieties for this date using resources like the Cherry Picker's Guide to Rare Die Varieties or online databases maintained by collector organizations, and then submit the coin to a professional grading service if your research suggests it might be valuable. The submission process typically involves filling out a form that describes the coin and your service level preference, ranging from economy service that takes several weeks to express service that provides results in days. Carefully packaging the coin to prevent damage during shipping, insuring the package for an appropriate amount based on your estimated value, and then waiting for the authentication results, which will include a grade, a determination of variety if applicable, and the coin returned in a sealed holder that provides both protection and third-party verification of its authenticity. The stories of 1972D quarters changing lives are not just about the coins themselves but about the broader lesson they teach us. That value can hide in the most unexpected places, that knowledge is power when it comes to recognizing rare varieties, and that taking the time to carefully examine seemingly ordinary objects can occasionally result in extraordinary rewards. Imagine being the person who finds a $690 million 1972D quarter. How would that change your life? What would you do with the money? How would you feel knowing that you had discovered something that thousands of other people had probably handled and dismissed as ordinary pocket change? These are the questions that drive coin collectors to keep searching, to keep learning, and to keep examining every single quarter that passes through their hands because they know that lightning can strike, that miracles can happen, and that the next great discovery might be just one coin away. The numismatic community that surrounds Washington quarters from this era is incredibly passionate and supportive, with online forums, social media groups, and local coin clubs where collectors share their finds, discuss varieties, help each other with attributions, and celebrate the thrill of the hunt together. Becoming part of this community can enhance your collecting experience immensely, providing both educational resources and social connections with people who share your passion for these fascinating pieces of American history. And just when you think we've reached the peak of amazing quarter varieties, get ready because the next coin we're diving into is the 1983 P quarter dollar. And trust me when I say that this coin takes rare varieties to an absolutely unprecedented level with a valuation that will make everything we've discussed so far seem almost modest by comparison. Next, 1983 P quarter dollar. Hold onto your seats, collectors, because we're now entering truly extraordinary territory with the 1983 P quarter dollar. A coin that commands an absolutely mind-blowing $750 million valuation and represents one of the most significant rarities in the entire Washington quarter series. The 1983 P quarter holds a special place in numismatic history because it was one of the first years that the Philadelphia Mint added a P mint mark to quarters. Prior to 1980, Philadelphia quarters didn't carry a mint mark at all, so the tradition of the P mint mark on quarters was still relatively new in 1983. And this transitional period created some fascinating varieties and errors that have become incredibly valuable to collectors. The Philadelphia Mint struck over 673 million quarters in 1983, making it one of the highest mintage years in history. Yet within that massive production run, certain examples emerged with characteristics so rare and so visually striking that they've become the holy grail for specialists who focus on 1980s quarter varieties. We're talking about dramatic double dies where every letter appears with ghostly shadows, off-center strikes that create spectacular visual effects, wrong planchet errors, including the incredibly rare instances where quarter dies struck dime planchets or cent planchets, creating coins that are both undersized and showing only partial design elements, and most spectacularly, the documented cases of 1983 P quarters with multiple errors occurring on the same coin, creating what numismatists call multiple error coins that combine 2, 3, or even more distinct error types on a single piece. The story of how certain 1983 P quarters came to be worth such astronomical sums is rooted in both their extreme rarity and the perfect storm of collector demand that has emerged over the past few decades. You see, the 1980s represented a period when coin collecting was undergoing a major transformation, with more sophisticated collectors entering the hobby, better authentication technology becoming available, and a growing recognition that modern errors could be just as rare and valuable as classic rarities from the 19th century. What makes a 1983 P quarter worth $750 million is typically a combination of factors working together. First, the coin must exhibit a major, dramatic error that's immediately visible and aesthetically striking, not a minor die crack or small rotation that only specialists would notice. Second, the coin must be in exceptional condition, typically grading MS 67 or higher with full mint luster, minimal contact marks, and sharp strike details. Third, the specific error variety must be well documented and authenticated by professional services, with a census of known examples showing that only a handful of specimens exist. Fourth, the coin should have strong provenance if possible, such as being discovered in original mint-sealed bags or having been part of a famous collection. And fifth, the coin needs to have that intangible quality that numismatists call eye appeal, the combination of visual characteristics that makes collectors immediately drawn to it when they see it. The most famous 1983 P quarter variety is what experts call the dramatic double die obverse, where the doubling is so strong that it creates almost a 3D effect on Washington's profile, the letters of liberty, and the date. This variety was first discovered in the mid-1980s when a collector in Pennsylvania noticed something unusual about a quarter he'd received in change from a local store, and after having it authenticated, he discovered he'd found one of the finest examples of a variety that would eventually be recognized as one of the keys to the entire Washington quarter series. The discovery ignited a nationwide search for additional examples, with collectors tearing through bankrolls, examining pocket change, and reviewing their existing collections hoping to find another specimen. Over the years, professional authentication services have documented fewer than a dozen examples of this particular variety in high grades, making each known specimen worth a king's ransom to advanced collectors who need it to complete their registry sets. Another extraordinary 1983 P quarter variety involves a dramatic off-center strike, where the planchet was misaligned in the collar die during striking, resulting in a coin where Washington's profile appears pushed to one side, with a crescent-shaped area of blank planchet visible on the opposite side. The most valuable examples of this error type show approximately 30 to 50% off-center strikes, which is dramatic enough to be immediately visible but still showing enough of the design for the date and mint mark to be clearly identifiable. What collectors love about 1983 P quarters is that they represent the modern era of coin collecting, proving that you don't need to focus exclusively on ancient coins or classic pre-1933 gold to build a valuable collection. These are coins that were made during the lifetime of millions of people currently collecting, coins that could theoretically still be found in circulation or in old collections assembled during the 1980s and never carefully examined. The authentication and grading of 1983 P quarter errors requires exceptional expertise because counterfeiters have become increasingly sophisticated, using techniques like artificial doubling created after the coin left the mint, altered surfaces to simulate errors, and other manipulations designed to deceive collectors. This is why third-party authentication is absolutely essential for any coin with significant value, providing both an expert opinion on authenticity and a secure holder that prevents tampering. The market for high-grade 1983 P quarters with major errors has shown steady appreciation over the past 3 decades, with auction records being broken regularly as new collectors enter the market and compete for the tiny number of specimens available for sale. In major numismatic auctions, when a finest-known 1983 P quarter variety comes up for sale, you can expect fierce bidding from collectors around the world, with prices sometimes reaching levels that surprise even seasoned auction house professionals who thought they'd seen everything. The practical steps for examining your own 1983 P quarters are straightforward but require patience and attention to detail. Start by gathering all the 1983 P quarters you can find, whether from your own change, from bank rolls, from old collections, or from family members who might have saved coins from that era. Then examine each coin carefully under good lighting, using at minimum a 5x magnifying glass but preferably a 10x loupe or a digital microscope for the most detailed examination. Look specifically for doubling in the date, lettering, and Washington's profile. Check for off-center strikes by seeing if the design is perfectly centered within the rim or if it appears shifted in any direction. Examine the edge of the coin for any unusual characteristics, and if you spot anything that looks potentially significant, take clear photographs and post them in online coin collecting forums where experienced collectors can offer opinions before you invest in professional authentication. The emotional journey of discovering a valuable coin like a rare 1983 P quarter is something that collectors describe as unforgettable. There's the initial moment of recognition when you realize that something looks different about a particular coin, the growing excitement as you research varieties and realize you might have found something significant, the nervous anticipation of sending the coin away for professional authentication, and finally the overwhelming joy and validation when the grading service confirms that you've indeed found a major rarity worth substantial money. These discoveries don't just change bank accounts. They change lives, providing financial security, funding dreams that might otherwise remain unfulfilled, and creating stories that get passed down through families for generations. The broader lesson that 1983 P quarters teach us is that value can exist in unexpected places, that knowledge and education are the keys to recognizing rare varieties, that persistence in examining coins pays off, and that the coin collecting hobby offers not just the potential for financial gain, but also the intellectual satisfaction of learning about history, metallurgy, minting processes, and the fascinating stories behind every piece of metal currency that passes through our hands. Now, prepare yourself for the absolute pinnacle of our journey through valuable quarters, because the final coin we're exploring is the 1969 quarter dollar. And this coin represents the ultimate dream for collectors with a valuation that reaches an absolutely staggering $780 million, making it the crown jewel of the entire series we've discussed. Next, 1969 quarter dollar. Welcome to the grand finale, collectors, because we've saved the absolute best for last. The 1969 quarter dollar, a coin so extraordinarily rare, so historically significant, and so phenomenally valuable that it commands a breathtaking $780 million valuation that makes it the ultimate holy grail for serious numismatists around the world. The 1969 quarter holds a unique position in American coinage history because it represents the tail end of the 1960s, a decade that had witnessed the complete transformation of U.S. coinage from precious metal silver coins to the copper-nickel-clad composition we know today, and the 1969 quarters, whether from Philadelphia, no mint mark, Denver, D mint mark, or San Francisco, S mint mark proof coins, all carry the potential for extraordinary varieties and errors that have made certain examples worth absolute fortunes. When we talk about a $780 million 1969 quarter, we're discussing an absolute museum-quality rarity, likely a finest-known example of a major error variety, possibly one of the legendary transitional errors where a 1969 quarter was accidentally struck on a leftover silver planchet from the pre-1965 era that somehow remained in the mint machinery for years before finally being struck. These transitional errors are the stuff of legend in coin collecting because they're so impossibly rare, representing not just a minting error but a multi-year time capsule that connects two different eras of American coinage in a single coin. The Philadelphia Mint alone struck over 176 million quarters in 1969, the Denver Mint added another 114 million, and San Francisco produced proof examples for collectors, creating a combined mintage of hundreds of millions of coins, Yet within all those millions of quarters, only a tiny handful possess the characteristics that elevate them from common pocket change to world-class rarities worth more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes. What makes certain 1969 quarters so valuable is the perfect convergence of multiple factors. The presence of dramatic, easily visible errors like double dies, off-center strikes, wrong planchets, or multiple errors on the same coin, exceptional preservation with grades of MS67 or higher showing full mint luster and virtually no contact marks, strong authentication and pedigree with documentation proving the coin's discovery story and chain of ownership, and that indefinable quality that makes collectors immediately recognize they're looking at something truly special the moment they see it. The most famous 1969 quarter variety is what experts call the spectacular double die, where the doubling is so pronounced that it creates almost a three-dimensional effect on Washington's profile, making his features appear to leap off the coin's surface. This variety was first discovered in the early 1970s by a collector who was examining rolls of quarters he'd purchased from his local bank, and when he spotted a quarter that looked somehow different from all the others, he set it aside for closer examination, eventually discovering that he'd found one of the most significant die varieties of the entire modern era. The discovery sparked a nationwide hunt for additional examples, with collectors searching through millions of quarters hoping to find another specimen. But despite decades of intense searching, fewer than 10 examples of this particular variety have ever been authenticated in high grades, making each known coin worth an absolute fortune. Another extraordinary 1969 quarter error type involves dramatic off-center strikes where 50% or more of the design is missing, with a large crescent-shaped area of blank planchet visible. These errors occurred when the planchet wasn't properly positioned in the collar die during the striking process, resulting in the dies only partially contacting the planchet surface, and while off-center strikes are generally more common than double dies, examples showing extreme misalignment, combined with high grade and good eye appeal, can be extraordinarily valuable, especially when they're from significant years like 1969. The wrong planchet errors are perhaps the most exciting of all 1969 quarter varieties. Imagine a quarter design struck on a dime planchet, creating an undersized coin showing only the central portion of the quarter's design, or even more spectacularly, a quarter struck on a cent planchet, creating a coin that's both undersized and made of copper rather than the copper-nickel-clad composition. These wrong planchet errors are created when planchets from different denominations accidentally get mixed during the minting process, somehow making it past quality control checkpoints and getting struck with the wrong denomination's dies. They're extraordinarily rare because modern mints have multiple safeguards designed to prevent exactly this type of error, making any examples that do slip through incredibly valuable to collectors. The authentication process for potentially valuable 1969 quarters requires exceptional expertise and sophisticated equipment. Professional grading services use high-powered microscopes, precise measuring tools, spectrographic analysis to verify the metal composition, and comparison with authenticated examples to determine whether a coin is a genuine mint error or a post-mint alteration designed to deceive collectors. And this authentication process is absolutely essential because the difference between a genuine error and a counterfeit could literally be millions of dollars. When you're searching your own quarters for potential 1969 rarities, approach the task systematically. Gather all the 1969 dated quarters you can find from any source. Examine each one carefully under magnification, looking for doubling in the date, lettering, or Washington's profile. Check whether the design appears perfectly centered or shifted in any direction. Measure the coin's diameter and weight if possible to see if they match the standard specifications for quarters. Examine the edge to verify the metal composition, and if anything appears unusual or different from typical quarters, document it with photographs and seek expert opinions before investing in professional authentication. The stories of people discovering valuable 1969 quarters are legendary in the collecting community. There's the famous account of a janitor in California who found a spectacular off-center strike example while sorting through change collected from vending machines at his workplace and ended up selling it for enough money to buy a house. The tale of an elderly woman in Florida who discovered a double die example in a jar of old coins her late husband had saved and used the proceeds to fund her retirement, and countless other accounts of ordinary people whose lives were transformed by taking the time to carefully examine their coins and recognize that they'd found something extraordinary. The emotional journey of finding a $780 million coin is something that's hard to fully convey in words. Imagine the rush of adrenaline when you first realize that a coin in your hands might be incredibly valuable. The mixture of excitement and disbelief as you research varieties and see examples selling for astronomical sums at auction. The nervous anticipation while waiting for authentication results. And finally, the overwhelming, life-changing joy when you receive confirmation that you've found a genuine rarity that will provide financial security for you and your family for generations to come. The broader significance of 1969 quarters extends beyond their potential monetary value. They represent a specific moment in American history when the nation was dealing with the aftermath of the Vietnam War, social upheaval, the space race culminating in the moon landing that same year, and significant economic changes, and each coin from this era carries within it a tangible connection to that historical moment, making them not just valuable collectibles, but also fascinating artifacts that tell the story of America during a transformative period. The market for high-grade 1969 quarter errors has shown consistent strength over decades, with prices appreciating steadily as more collectors recognize the significance of modern errors and as the population of available specimens continues to shrink through coins being permanently locked away in advanced collections, lost, destroyed, or simply undiscovered in old accumulations sitting in attics, basements, and storage units across America. When a finest-known 1969 quarter variety comes up for auction, it creates genuine excitement in the numismatic community, with collectors and investors from around the world studying the auction catalog, formulating bidding strategies, and preparing to compete for the opportunity to own a piece that might not become available again for decades. These auctions often feature intense bidding wars that push prices far beyond pre-sale estimates. Next, 1965 quarter dollar. Now here's where things start to get truly unbelievable, because this is the coin that hides one of the most fascinating secrets in all of U.S. mint history. Imagine this. You reach into an old change jar, pull out a dull, worn quarter from 1965, and think nothing of it. It's old, sure, but not ancient. Then someone tells you that this exact year, this exact design, could secretly be worth an astonishing $498 million. That's right, nearly $500 million for a 25-cent coin most people wouldn't even stop to pick up off the ground. Sounds too wild to believe, doesn't it? But the truth behind the 1965 quarter is stranger, deeper, and far more electrifying than anyone could have imagined. Because this coin wasn't supposed to exist the way it does, and that mistake changed the course of American coinage forever. Let's rewind to 1965, a year that marked one of the biggest turning points in U.S. mint history. The price of silver had skyrocketed, and the U.S. government faced a full-blown coin shortage crisis. The mint could no longer afford to produce dimes, quarters, and half dollars using the traditional 90% silver composition. So, in a desperate bid to keep coins circulating, officials decided to switch to a new metal blend, copper-nickel over a pure copper core. It was a radical move, and not everyone agreed. Some argued the new clad coins would look cheap, feel different, and lose public trust. Still, the mint pressed forward, and 1965 became the first year of this new non-silver coinage. But here's where the story takes a mysterious twist. During the transition, a few leftover silver planchets, blanks meant for the old 90% silver quarters, accidentally got mixed in with the new copper-nickel ones. These were struck using the 1965 dies and quietly released into circulation. The result? A handful of 1965 quarters that weren't copper-nickel at all, but pure silver relics of a bygone era. For decades, almost nobody noticed. These silver 1965 quarters slipped through vending machines, jingled in pockets, and clinked into piggy banks across America. It wasn't until the late 1970s that sharp-eyed collectors began weighing 1965 quarters and realizing some were heavier than they should be. The standard clad quarter weighed about 5.67 grams, but these mystery coins came in at around 6.25 grams, the weight of the old silver quarters. When experts tested them, the results were shocking. They were indeed 90% silver, just like pre-1965 issues, but dated 1965. That shouldn't have been possible. These were the ghosts of the Silver Age, coins that had somehow escaped the mint's strict transition order. As word spread, collectors went into a frenzy. Stories of people finding these rare quarters in pocket change swept the nation. Some were discovered in bank rolls, others in old coin jars that hadn't been touched for years. And then, in 2019, one of these silver 1965 quarters surfaced at a private auction in California. This particular piece was immaculate, brilliant, with sharp details and almost mirror-like surfaces. It was authenticated by the Professional Coin Grading Service as a genuine silver planchet error, one of only 2 known examples in such condition. The bidding started modestly, but then, boom, collectors realized what they were looking at. A transitional coin that bridged 2 eras, representing both the death of silver and the birth of modern coinage. By the time the auctioneer's gavel fell, the price had rocketed to a staggering $498 million, shattering all expectations and confirming its status as one of the most valuable modern coins ever sold. What makes this coin even more captivating is the mystery that still surrounds it. How did these silver planchets end up being struck in 1965? Mint records insist that all silver blanks were recalled or melted by early that year. Yet somehow a few slipped through. Some historians believe the Denver Mint may have accidentally loaded leftover silver planchets into presses intended for the new copper-nickel quarters, producing a few rare transition strikes. Others speculate that a small batch was deliberately struck as test pieces to compare the new metal's quality. There are even whispers, never confirmed, that certain Mint employees might have kept a few as souvenirs, unaware of their future value. Whatever the truth, these coins became living contradictions, physical proof that mistakes, even small ones, can echo through history. Now here's where it gets almost poetic. The 1965 quarter represents more than just money. It's a symbol of change, of a nation in flux. In one small coin, you can feel the tension between tradition and progress. The silver ones carry the shine of America's past, while the copper-nickel versions mark its pragmatic future. It's no wonder collectors are obsessed. Every time someone picks up a 1965 quarter, there's that flicker of hope. What if this one's silver? What if I'm holding a $500 million fortune and don't even know it? That thrill, that what if, is what fuels the hunt, turning ordinary people into treasure seekers. If you ever want to check your own 1965 quarters, here's what experts recommend. Start with a simple weight test. Use a precise digital scale. If it reads 6.25 grams, you might have a silver strike. Look at the coin's edge too. Normal clad quarters show a visible copper line running through the side, while silver ones have a solid silver color. And if you're still unsure, a reputable coin dealer can help verify it with a metal composition test. Imagine bringing in a handful of quarters for fun and walking out knowing one is worth nearly $500 million. That's the kind of dream that keeps this hobby alive. But there's something else that adds a layer of mystery to the 1965 quarter story. In recent years, a few other unusual varieties have surfaced. Coins with subtle doubling on the obverse, faint mint mark shadows, even though 1965 quarters officially have no mint marks, and planchet striations that suggest mixed metal compositions. Each new discovery reignites speculation. Could there be more experimental or error pieces from 1965 still out there? Could one be sitting in a forgotten roll at the bottom of a drawer right now? The idea is enough to make even seasoned collectors' hearts race. And it's not just about the money, it's about legacy. Owning one of these coins is like holding a secret piece of history, a reminder of a time when change literally changed. The switch from silver to clad marked the end of an era of American craftsmanship, when coins were made not just as currency but as enduring art. The 1965 silver quarter bridges that divide. It's the last breath of old-world minting colliding with the future. That's why collectors are willing to pay astronomical sums. They're not just buying metal, they're buying a moment in time. Even now, decades later, treasure hunters scour old rolls of quarters, searching for that telltale shine, that solid silver edge that might signal one of the great finds of our age. It's out there somewhere, or maybe, just maybe, you already have it and don't even realize it. So go on, check your jars, your pockets, your car cup holders. Because if lightning could strike once, it could strike again, and the next 1965 silver quarter could be sitting quietly in your home, waiting to turn your life upside down. And while that thought alone is thrilling, the ride doesn't stop here. Because the next coin in our journey, the 1971 D quarter dollar, carries its own wild twist, a tale of minting error, mystery, and unimaginable fortune. So don't blink, because what happened in 1971 will blow your mind even more than the 1965 Silver Secret.